How do you get over your fears? How do you get over those fears? Um, One of the things that I do is I've learned how to have gratitude. So if I'm scared of something, or if something is evoking some measure of anxiety in me, and I know it's something that I have to do. Now, obviously, there's a natural fear of danger. If someone is pointing a gun, you need to run for your life. Okay, I'm talking about getting over those internal fears that stop you from living a productive life and having a productive week. So for me, learning how to be having a mindset of gratitude or being appreciative for the things that I have helps me to balance that fear when I'm confronted with it. My next point is that talking about it helps, because when you can hear yourself talking about the fear or the anxiety, you actually are stepping outside of it. You become an observer. You're hearing yourself talk, and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Why am I thinking that way? That's completely off. So, or revelation comes. So my next thing, I have them written down because I don't want to forget. Um, Writing things out, journaling is so important, because you have a record and you can go back and you can look at how much you've grown, the areas that you need to grow, the areas that you're immature, the areas that you're insecure. So writing out your fears, not writing them out in a way where it's a declaration or memorializing them, not in that sense, but writing it out so that you can see what it is that you're really afraid of. What is it that you're afraid of? And usually it is an outcome. When you write things out, you can start to notice patterns. You can start to notice, okay, why is it that whenever this happens, I back away? Why is it that whenever, it's time for me to, go and do something, I immediately break out and start to sweat? Why is that? What am I afraid of? And then what you can do is, once you start writing it out, you can observe, you become an observer of yourself, and you start to say, okay, wait a minute, let me see the cycles. Okay, what's the common denominator here? Now, another thing that helps me to deal with fear is imagining my life and how different it would be if I can get over this fear. And so I think about, because I'm a minister, Christian minister, I'm going to go back to the Bible. And that's what Moses did with the children of Israel. When he came to them and said, this is what God wants for you, he was saying to them things that they had never heard. And he was creating a world that they couldn't even imagine could exist. And so he had to invoke, or he had to stir up their imagination. He had to describe, he had to give them a very detailed description of where God wanted to take them, so they could imagine that kind of life, because they were very afraid. They were very afraid. So he had to say to them, listen, God wants to take you to a land, and not just a land with some grass on it, right? With some dirt. God wants to take you to a land that's flowing with milk and honey. And if you understand anything about that time of life, that milk and honey statement said a lot. It talked about surplus, abundance, no lack, all your needs met, being enriched. That's the picture he was trying to give them, because he wanted them to see that there is something so much better than making these bricks in the hot sun for somebody else. And so he had to use their imagination to invite them to go on to a journey that would empower them to do it in spite of the fear. So imagination is a very powerful thing, because your imagination can make you terrified and set you into a position of having panic attacks, or your imagination can do something else. Your imagination is a tool to be used by you. The thing that I think will help you, it's helped me, and it always has helped me, is having symbols or having things around you that are going to remind you of your why. Remind you of why you're doing what you're doing. Remind you of why you're here. Remind you of why you got up out of bed in the morning. And it can't just be our kids or our pets. It has to be something that connects us to our divine purpose, to that thing that we were created and formed and fashioned to do. And it has to have some significant meaning to us. It has to be a symbol or a picture or a quote or something that will invoke boldness and braveness and courage and hope in you. There's one thing I used to see growing up. My father printed this picture of I think it was a pelican. It was a cartoon picture of a pelican. And he was trying to swallow a frog. And the frog was halfway in the pelican's mouth. But his arms and legs was free. So his torso was free. So he actually, the frog, as he's trying to be digested by the pelican, is actually grabbing the pelican's neck and choking the pelican, preventing the pelican from swallowing him. And so the quote underneath, I think, was, "Never ever give up." And so I love that picture. Whenever I see that picture, I think about my family, first of all, and my dad. But I also think about the importance of never stopping, never forgetting, or always remembering that you have a reason to fight. You have a reason to keep going. You have a reason not to quit. And even when everything around you is screaming, just stop. Okay, you may have to take a pit stop. You might have to get out the car, stretch your legs, get some gas, go get some water, whatever. But get back in that car and keep going, because you have not reached your destination yet. And the minute you stop, that's when you lose. So I hope that this really helped you. But I'm so glad that you guys were able to join me. And I hope and pray that something that I shared helped you to kind of tap into why you're not making the most of your time and why you're not making the most of your week.